Well, welcome everyone to another edition of the Travel Royally podcast. Today, we're excited to have Dave Hill on the Travel Royally podcast. Dave's an attorney who lives in Lexington, Kentucky, where he sells residential real estate for Rector Hayden Realtors. He's also involved in commercial real estate and investor real estate in the central Kentucky area. He's got a blog that's called The One Bearded Golfer. I urge you to check that out. And he's also the host of his own podcast, and that's called Blind Shots Podcast. And that's where I came to know Dave. He's got a deep love for Scottish golf. We're very happy to have him on the podcast today. Dave, welcome to the Travel Royally podcast.
Glad to be here, Jeff.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you here. And, we share a love of Scottish golf, as I mentioned, and we'll talk a lot about that. But I want to start at the beginning. As I said, I love the Blind Shots podcast and your exploits, not only in Scotland, but around the U.S. playing golf. So let's start at the beginning. How did you come to golf in the first place?
I am a Tiger Woods golfer. My baseball career ended when they handed me my high school diploma, and I needed something to do. I'm of the vintage that was about the time Tiger Woods was entering the scene. I think he just won the Masters through the spring I graduated high school. So he made golf look pretty fun for the first time. My brothers, I got an older brother, his clubs were sitting in the corner gathering dust. And I thought, well, I ought to give that a try. It's swinging. I've been swinging a baseball bat. How hard could swinging a golf club be? And somewhere eventually, probably within that first year, I might have made crisp contact with a golf ball, and I was off to the races.
Excellent. Yeah, I was introduced to the game by my father, which seems like how a lot of people are introduced to golf through their parents. But so, do you belong to a club in Kentucky?
I'm a gypsy. I'm blessed in Lexington, Kentucky. We have 5 city courses, one short course, 4 18-hole courses, and 2 of them I would put up against sort of city courses anywhere except maybe San Francisco. One is a Pete and PB Dye course called Kearney Hill, and the other is about 95 years old, right in the interior of the city, called it's been renamed Gay Brewer Junior Course at Picadome. And we've got a really active men's league here locally that kind of rotates. Events rotate. They did an omnibus league and rotate around the courses. And there's probably 50 or 60 guys that play in that pretty regularly, kind of across the flights and whatnot. So I've made that my golf home, which makes the travel negotiations with the wife much easier since we're not paying for a club here locally. I'm not anchored down, so I can hop in the car when I need to.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, I live south of the city of Atlanta in Peachtree City. We have 5 courses here. You join one, you join them all. It's $350 a month, and it's hard to beat the value that you get. But we kind of do the same thing. We rotate our group of 16 every Saturday. We play a different course, so it's a lot of fun. So, as I mentioned, I came to know you through Blind Shots podcast. I feel like I know you. I didn't say that earlier, but I've listened to you so many times. So, tell us about the Blind Shots podcast and the One Bearded Golfer blog.
The One Bearded Golfer blog came first, and I guess I got serious about golf about 10 years ago, and to the point that I embarked to take lessons. Yeah, playing for 15 years without ever having a golf lesson, not the best way to pick up the game. Enough people do it, but if you can do that in the other order, I highly recommend it. Anyway, so I started getting serious about it. I was traveling a little bit more for golf, just seeing what's beyond our city borders. And I wanted to be able to remember things. So I started snapping pictures, and I realized very quickly, instead of paying to print out pictures down at Walgreens or using up laser printer ink, there are all these free blogs. This was in the height of the blogging era, and all this stuff was free. So basically I just used it as an online photo album. And it just kind of evolved from there, started trying to think critically about where I'd been in the courses and what I liked and what I didn't like. And, just kind of took off from there. And then the trip to Scotland was kind of the impetus to finally, I'm in Kentucky, and, we like to be 20 years behind the rest of the world on everything else. So, as podcasting was ramping up and reaching its peak, I started thinking, maybe I should jump on this fad. it's just a way to share. I felt like there was a space in the podcast areas. I'm not going to give you a prediction about who's going to win the Masters or fantasy odds or anything like that. And I'm not a big gearhead. I can't tell you about the latest, greatest tech coming out of the PGA show. But for guys that just like to travel and see different things and maybe a certain type of golf or golf course, I just thought that I had some experiences I could share. And going to Scotland, to the home country, really kind of kickstarted that, and have just been on the journey since then.
Yeah. Well, I like I love your podcast actually, but I feel the exact same way. When you look at all the podcasts that I subscribe to, I prefer the ones that are about travel. And like you, I really don't care to hear a recap of last week's tour event. There were so many people doing that. And there are so many people talking, as you've talked about, the latest gear. There's plenty of those. There's very few who talk about travel like I do and like you do. And we do it as a service to our clients and prospects, that you can find a lot of great detail, a lot of great content about how to plan a trip or what courses you should consider. Or we've got one episode dedicated strictly to St. Andrews, what to do there, around that area.
I realized pretty quickly writing the blog, I had all these high ambitions. Like, oh, I'm reading all these blogs with top 100 lists and top 100 chases and quests and things. And then I realized pretty quickly, no one's going to care if I have the 457th review of Harbor Town or Pebble Beach or something they can see on TV. So being based in Kentucky, there's not a lot of golf coverage. We've got some hidden gems. We don't publicize them particularly well. I don't know if that's by design or not. But kind of my nexus of where I am are parts of the country that may be less well known for golf, or an audience that isn't represented. Nobody talks about the golf courses around here. So that was kind of an impetus to just keep going on the blog and the podcast. Is there was a big void there that I could attempt to fill anyway.
Right. Well, I think the other thing, when you talk about the 457th review of Harbor Town, I have zero interest in that. But listen to you talk about Ely, which I would say 99% of Americans have never heard of. But it's a course that you would say is on your must playlist.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if there's a more fun course in the world than Ely, or a more beautiful setting than Ely. But that, I find that a lot more interesting than reviewing Harbor Town or Kiowa or Pebble Beach or what have you. So what led you to want to go to Scotland in the first place?
Ancestral homeland. My mom's family is Scottish. Allen's down the line, wiped out by the Campbells however many centuries ago. So she had been bugging me. She goes back every couple of years, and she'd been bugging me to go back. And then I think just kind of some osmosis of listening to enough golf travel sites and podcasts. There used to be the Scottish Golf podcast, Rue McDonald, right? Rue McDonald and Grayson Loomis, and then and then Mr. Lawrence and their kind of travel golf, and they liked some things that I liked as well, and they had built up Scotland. And then I had a friend that went to Scotland for work, and he came back and this is someone who is rather unimpressed perpetually, and he came back just kind of awestruck. And that kind of sealed the deal. It's like, well, I want to do that now. So how do we do it? And started from there.
Well, the three gentlemen that you referenced, I've had on the podcast. They're all wonderful people with great stories and great insights. I love talking to them. So, tell us about your first experience playing links golf in Scotland.
It was just phenomenal. Just a life-changing, perspective-adding experience. We went in the shoulder season, and that's because I won a golden ticket. The first time I ever applied for a guaranteed old course tee time, I got it. And I remember it's one of those moments I remember. I was on my way to shooting about 110 at Valhalla in Louisville in a rainstorm at about 40 degrees in October. And on the 18th tee, bored out of my mind, I checked my email, and I've got 2 emails from the St. Andrews Links Trust. One saying I did not get, they couldn't help me for the high season for the following year. Yeah. And then the second email I read said, you have a guaranteed old course tee time on October 28th, I think, or 27th of 2019. And so that was almost exactly a year in advance. So I just built a trip around that. Would I have eventually gotten to Scotland? Of course, that was on my list, but that was a big booster shot to get things in gear. So I started researching how to do a trip. Graydon Loomis's book was a nice outline guide. His ebook, How to Plan a Scottish Golf Trip. It kind of used his principles and modified them. I knew I had one guaranteed tee time. Started looking, and I recruited my travel mates. And once I got their commitments, did flights and lodging, and kind of filled in with tee times. And the nice thing, the one thing I remember in the planning phase, everyone worries that you're not going to be able to travel on Saturday because you can't get a game on Saturday because that's when all the club comps are, when all the competitions. Well, in the high season, a lot of those seaside villages have cleared out. People have gone back to work. They're off holiday. It's too cold for them. So I was able to get a game at Ely, which turned out to be just a boon. I might have made the trip early in the week. So planned out the trip, and we did the typical American thing. We scheduled a red-eye flight where we could get off the plane in Edinburgh and head out to North Berwick. I talked to enough people that said, yes, that's the ritual. That's what you should do. Little did I know that the train we were going to take was going to catch on fire that day. So it became a true trains, planes, and automobiles situation. Yeah. But we get off the plane a little groggy, head out to East Lothian, and North Berwick is our introduction to golf in Scotland. Can you imagine? So just awestruck with every.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, just awestruck everywhere you look. You've got the water, you've got these holes that you know about, and then all of a sudden you're kind of in the midst of playing them. There's a 20 to 30 mile an hour howler right in our face on the way out and with us on the way in. It's links golf, so there are bad shots that are hilariously bad, and we learn to laugh very quickly. And I'll say this: I spent an inordinate amount of time worrying about my rain gear and my windproofing gear, and just worried to death about the weather because it's Scotland and it's going to be October. It rained on us for 4 holes for the trip, and 2 of them were at North Berwick. The Chamber of Commerce could not have ordered better weather. So, that was our introduction to Scottish golf. My friend Fred birdied number 16 perfection at North Berwick. And he still talks about that every chance he gets today. I remember so many moments from that round. You think it would be a blur, being travel weary and jet lagged. I remember standing on the 17th green, that big punch bowl at North Berwick, and just looking down the coast and realizing, okay, how do I get back? I'm already thinking, when can I justify coming back to do this again?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're fortunate to have been once, right?
Yeah.
And it clearly, very, very early in your first round, you came to appreciate how fortunate you were and what an amazing place it is. I was there for 10 days. I got back about a week ago, and I didn't play the West Links at North Berwick. I played the East Links because I'd never played the Glen Golf Club. And it was very cold, windy, but still magnificent because you're in Scotland playing golf. And to play North Berwick, my first round 25 years ago was at Prestwick, which was a surreal experience that I appreciated links golf from the moment I stepped on that course, but I didn't understand the history of golf until I became more of a student of that, and have now played it 5 times and understand the history of the game and its role in the development of golf and the connection to Old Tom Morris and the Open Championship and so on. But
right.
It's funny. I was thinking about you guys last week. I was on that train from North Berwick into Edinburgh and back at night. And it's only a 30-minute train ride. And had your train not caught fire, it would have dropped you off just steps away from North Berwick. The story of your bus ride was hilarious too.
Yeah, the bus stops. So we didn't know it was a flip a coin situation. We get to the train station, somebody, nice lady, tells us that it's canceled, and we're like, okay. And she, I guess, recommends the train, and we've got to make a quick decision. We're lugging clubs through downtown Edinburgh in the middle of the day, and we're like, do we try to find a cab out there? She says the bus will do it. Okay, so we decided to take a bus. Well, no one told us that the bus stops about every 300 feet. It's not necessarily like maybe New York City or something has stops that frequent, but it seems like we're never going to get outside of the city walls of Edinburgh. And once we did, it was fine. We go past Gullin and see some beautiful stuff out there in the East Lothian countryside. But being travel weary, all of a sudden we've got a tea time and there's a member competition. So I called the pro shop, tell him we're going to be late. And he says, you got to get here before 2 because I've got a couple dozen members to send out. So all of a sudden we're on the clock. Like, I appreciated that he was willing to take care of us, but it was going to be either we get out in front of these guys or there's going to be a 2-hour wait, and there's no way we could get finished in that time of year. So I go from very worried to very comfortable on this bumpy train that's kind of massages me to sleep, and one of my other travel mates, Matt. And Fred realizes we're in trouble somewhere in the town of North Berwick when the bus has turned and starts heading back, and we're still on it. So he wakes me up, and I don't say a word. I realize what's happened. It's like, oh no, we've turned. So I just shoot forward to ring the bell. I don't say, oh, I think we should get off. I don't think none of that. He said, why did you tell me we're going to get off the bus? It's like, I did. Did you see you could see the smoke trail from where I ran up, we're the only 3 people on there. And luckily it stopped about where the train station was. And we had a 2-block walk to the starter hut, and we're able to get on and everything. But that was our introduction. We almost missed North Berwick, because Fred, my travel companion, didn't know any better. I was the logistics guy. I'd done all the planning. I'd looked at a map. He was just along for the ride, and almost with disastrous consequence.
Well, I know exactly where that turns around, and you didn't have a lot of room. It was maybe half a mile before it would have been out of back headed to Gullin.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's North Berwick's an amazing town. I just stayed there for 3 or 4 nights. And it's like a mini St. Andrews. No one would look askance at you walking down the street with golf clubs on your back in there. They might look askance at you in Edinburgh, as you mentioned, but not in North Berwick. Everyone's walking around with golf clubs on the back.
No, we went to the ship inn to grab some food before we headed back into town, and they had a little room that you make the comparison to St. Andrews is so apt, because that 1st and 18th fairway looks an awful lot like the old course, the way it's set up, the way the clubhouse is placed. There's some very expensive cars if you blow one right off the 18th tee that you've got to worry about. But the little town with just the small stone streets, then nobody looked at us sideways carrying golf clubs, even in late October. Yeah. Very, very much like a little St. Andrews, just across the bay.
Yeah, I love taking people to North Berwick for the first time, parking along the 18th and having them look at that green. It looks like, how can you get a ball to stop on that? Because it literally looks like a turtle top, right, or the back of a turtle. But now I know the prized tee time that you got was on the old course, and as I've listened to the Blind Shots podcast, I really love the stories about what you saw on the old course, because I think I was laughing out loud at 2 of them. And, one was, I guess you were in Rusacks having lunch or breakfast.
Yeah.
Waiting for your tee time. And you see someone do something unbelievable on the first tee. Tell people what you saw.
So yeah, we're in a bay window. Everyone says go to Russell's for breakfast. You can, You're there. You can leave your clubs out at the old course. Just go walk around, get something to eat. We've got a mid-morning tee time. That was the one day I knew we were not going to try to play any extra golf. There's no, you don't. You just savor and you head out afterwards to recount your round with all your buddies. So we're sitting there and we're watching groups tee off. We were worried there was no frost delay, so people were moving out. And someone, it appeared to be someone on, not a local anyway. And on the first tee, they make a wild lash at the ball, and it goes right between his legs, right at us. It just scampers, down towards the Valley of Sin. And instantly, we're all just mortified. We did not need that visual. Thinking right. you have waited. We invent a narrative. He has waited his whole life for this moment. He has come to the Mecca of golf, the holy city, the holy site. He's finally here. And what happens? He tops one between his own feet. Just could not.
What did he do? Did he re-tee, or he didn't play it out of the Valley of Sin, did he?
I think they took mercy on him and let him hit again very quickly. Kind of with the rule we have in our group is if you can re-tee it before it stops moving, you get to play again. So I'm thinking he went down and retrieved the ball afterwards, or his caddy did, but no, they didn't make him play. Although you've heard horror stories that that you're only allowed one off the first tee at the old course, or else the powers that be will send you on. But it was just horrifying.
Well, we had a buddy of mine that's gone on many trips with us. He said he had a friend there, and there was a woman who was a visitor. It doesn't matter that it's a woman. This could have been a man, but she addressed her ball, whiffed 3 times, topped the 4th one, and it went about 10 yards in front of her. And the starter walks out, retrieves her ball, walks back to her, hands the ball to her and says, "Madam, your round is complete."
Oh my goodness.
Can you imagine? You there's no way someone that whiffs 3 times, it would slow up the rest of the day around that course.
Oh, sure.
And I'm sure they gave her money back, and I'm sure they said, "We're going to book you a time right now on the new course or Eden or one of the others where she would have a better time."
Right.
So, yeah. Well, and you were paired. I still can't believe you only got 2 guys to join you. I still can't believe you couldn't get a 4th. I think that says more about you and your personality than your friends, to be truthful. The fact that you couldn't attract someone that got a tee time at the old course. But I think that, so you were connected with a 4th on the old, a gentleman from California. And what happened on the 17th tee is just remarkable. If you don't mind recounting that, and you can listen to the Blind Shots podcast and hear this for yourself, but if you can recount that, that's one of the funniest things I've ever heard.
Sure. Polo was a very nice guy. He was a sports psychologist of all things. He was from the West Coast and got paired up, and we as a 3 Americans, we didn't care. All were welcome. Come join us. We all had caddies, so it was going to be, relatively easy to keep pace of play. And we've had a nice time. And this poor guy is there just seemed to be anguish every time he stood over the ball because he knew something was going to go wrong. And he had one of those where you start playing your miss. And so he's lining up with this just crazy open club face, trying to avoid his hook because he comes in, he's basically swinging from his right hip pocket at the ball. So we kind of bang our way around the course and we're having fun. We come to the famous 17th tee, the road hole. You've got the old course hotel right there. And Matt and Fred hit, and they're doing fine. Matt actually bombs one. I think he parred that hole. Never lets me forget about it. And so Polo steps up, and he's, like I said, relatively young guy, big athletic swing. Well, all of a sudden, he squares up that open club face, and he hits one. He doesn't hit the old course hotel. He hits one over the old course hotel to the right, and going right. And everyone's like, there's no yelling for, because no one's going to expect this coming in. And all of a sudden, our Fred's caddy goes, "Bleep me, that's in the car park." And we all just kind of die, just like, Polo, you're going to drop up there, somewhere up there safe. And now he was the third player to hit. I've still got to go. So I have this visual in my head, and I'm already nervous because I'm kind of hitting the ball thin that day, and I don't want to knock the jigger, knock shingles off the jigger or something. So I see that. So I do the other thing. We make a Valentine's Day heart out of the road hole because I hit one so far left, going left, that when we find it, I'm inbounds on the old course by 2 feet. I'm down in some long grass on my way to the Himalayas putting course. And bless my caddy's heart.
You blew it through the second fairway.
Yes. Not even close. Literally almost on the ladies' putting course. And my poor caddy, a regular caddy, he had done a great job. I was the most competitive player in my group, and he luckily I had him instead of the jokester. But he had never considered getting a yardage from over there to the 17th green because it just hadn't come up in conversation with anybody. So, and I've never done this to a caddy. You don't want to step on their job, but he's kind of fumbling. He's looking at his yardage book and he's kind of looking around at what landmarks from over there. And I said, Steve, would you like me to shoot this one? I've got my laser. And without missing a beat, without hesitating, yeah, Dave, if you wouldn't mind, that'd be great. Because he's completely lost. So we talk through it and we decide I'm going to play to the 18th tee box, and I've got a chance. I lip one out for par, so it worked out. But yeah, I saw someone. No one hit the old course hotel in our group, but Polo gave it hell trying.
Well, I'll tell you what. That's a great lesson for the motto when you play there. Left is right and right is shite.
Right.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, you can go as far left as you want on every hole except 9, 10, and 12, where you have to play right. Or you can't, I shouldn't say you have to play right, but you certainly can't go left on those 3 holes. So like I said, I was there the last week, standing on the 18th, or excuse me, the 17th tee, thinking it's impossible to do that. Right.
It is not.
And I talked to my playing companions who have played it 1,000 times, literally played the old course 1,000 times over their lifetime. And they said they've never seen anyone do that. And nor have they seen anyone hit one between their legs. So you had 2 first that,
October in St. Andrews. It's wild and crazy times.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I've got a funny story. Well, 2 funny stories about that. I remember about 10 years ago, I was playing the old course, the first hole, and I was hitting 4-iron. I was longer 10 years ago than I am today. And I kind of topped one down the right, nearly out of bounds. And then I had to hit the same club into the green. And this time I ripped it. And it's on the green, 40 feet left of the flag, and I roll in the putt. I got a birdie with a topped drive. I mean,
just turn around, head to the Dunvegan at that point. Your luck's not going to get any better.
It can't get any better. You're right. And then the other one, I spent the summer there. My girlfriend and I moved to St. Andrews for the summer in 2021. And we rented a house about 150 yards from the old course. It was amazing. I mean, I walked down there every day. I could have played it as many times as I wanted. I could have played every day had I chosen to. And I got on one day. I was with 3 guys. 2 of them were Americans. One was from London. And we played. We're having a great day. Everybody's playing well. I mean, it was rare, right? We're all going to break 80, or it looks like we are. I shot 80 because I bogeyed 18, but I bogeyed 17 and 18. But anyway, we got to, let me think, the 16th green, and there's a crowd of people there. A dozen people watching people approach. So we get up, we start talking to them, and it's a group of Germans who've come over and going to play the old course the next day. And we were the last tee time of the day. And this would have been in August. So this was getting to be 9 o'clock at night kind of thing, right? Where it's still light. So they fall in behind us and walk down 17 and 18 with us, right? And like what you see in a major tournament where the people run in from inside the ropes, right? And we're joking with them and they're cheering us on. And I hear some people say, when we went by Rusak's, I heard some people say, is is there someone famous in that group? You know, because like who would follow? Why would you follow four amateurs
Right.
around the old course? And it was very special because on our second shots they were clapping. Right? It was
Nice.
it was priceless. It was um, yeah. That's St.
Nice.
Andrews is a very special place. So let me ask this: you obviously have a love of Scotland and links golf. What about links golf is so appealing to you?
The options, specifically, if it comes down to it, you can play any particular shot any number of different ways. And that just appeals to me. That being able, you can be creative, you can be boring, you can attack, you can be defensive. It's just that those courses, the way they set up, the way the ground is used to set up the golf holes over there, you have options. And it's always windy, so that makes it fun because you have to be creative depending on which way the wind is going. And if you get the rare calm day, then it's exciting because you may have a scoring opportunity. You mentioned one of the places we went was Ely, which is a very short golf course by modern standards.
Right.
And its defense is it's on the coast in two different directions, from the south and from the west. And so there's always wind somewhere. But I could foresee, we had a good windy day, probably 25 blowing 30, 35, which made it fun. But if you caught that on the rare calm day, and if you were, single digit handicap, all of a sudden you're seeing stars and hearts because there's not a ton of defense. So you would have that opportunity. And I like the puzzle of you go out there and it's blowing 40. Well, how are you going to get around this course? How are you going to learn to not get the ball in the air or strike it solidly? So that sort of thing. Links golf is a different experience literally every time you go out there. It doesn't matter if you're playing the same course over and over again because the conditions are so important to the golf. So I think that got its hooks in me pretty quickly.
Well, I think what you're saying is absolutely right, Dave. But I think the other part of that's why they play so much match play, right? Like there are going to be holes where you're going to lose balls because of the wind, right? It's going to go in the gorse or on the beach or what have you. And so knowing that if you lose a ball, that you're not going to be out of the match,
right,
lends itself to playing that type of match play, which and I played in tournaments over there. I didn't tell you this, but I belong to a club in northern Scotland called Murray that you would love if you love like Ely and Leven Links as you do. Mm-hmm. It's a course like that. It's just pure fun. And I remember early on playing there in the Murray Open, and par becomes irrelevant.
Right.
It's everyone's dealing with this heavy wind. I just need to keep it in play. I beat all my buddies this year in our tournament this past year. We play for a replica of the Claret Jug.
Nice.
And so we play at this course called Fortrose and Rosemarkie, which is another one you've got to play because it's spectacular. It's on a narrow spit of land. It's like out and back. It's short like Ely, mm-hmm. But spectacular. When we were getting out of the van, I pulled my driver out and just left it. I'm thinking, there's no way I can hit this, right? So most of the day I was hitting 2 hybrid on the par 4s and par 5s. There were 2 par 4s downwind where I hit 8 iron and still had a 9 iron or a wedge in. Right.
And that's part of the puzzle too, is all of a sudden your stock yardages become irrelevant. I remember very vividly standing on, I think it's maybe the 15th tee at Leven. It's like a 200 yard, that day was like a 210 yard par 3. And I'm thinking, okay, 6 or 7 iron because the wind is just howling.
Yeah.
Is the opposite wind of when the day we played Ely. Complete perfect 180 direction change, and thinking, okay, how'd I do this and not put it in someone's garden back there? Because those look like very nice houses, and they probably wouldn't appreciate this. Um, but yeah, it's a different type of golf, and that's I think what I love the most.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Dave, if you go as frequently as I do, you become a better golfer because when you get home, you're thinking more creatively about how to play golf. I'm very comfortable hitting bump and runs around the greens here in the U.S. now, where I'm uncomfortable hitting a flop shot or, you know, going through the air. I'm very comfortable hitting those types of shots. And when the wind is up, I know I have a competitive advantage because
Right.
I've played so much in it. Now, you planned your own trip, which is what I did when I first went. Is there anything about your trip that you would have done, looking back, that you would do differently?
I would do the transportation logistics differently. The friend that had gone over beforehand that sold me on Scotland, he played Prestwick and he played North Berwick. So his two experiences were take the train, get off the train, walk 500 feet, play golf, rinse, repeat. So I think I put a little too much faith in the ScotRail maps and things like that. Now it ended up we ended up well taken care of by one of the local taxi services in St. Andrews, um, who actually who made it through the pandemic. I heard from him last week. They're doing fine. He's thinking about getting into the podcast or content game because he caters to the golf.
Right.
He thinks maybe there might be a niche of some storytelling. But I would have planned that different. I would have looked more seriously at maybe hiring out a car for the week, which we essentially did with this taxi service, but just kind of after the fact.
Yeah.
And that would have avoided the planes, trains, and automobiles nightmare on the way to North Berwick too.
You had some difficulty getting to Carnoustie as well, as I recall. Or
it wasn't difficult. It was just obnoxious. We got up, we had an early tee time on the championship course at Carnoustie. And so we took about the 5 a.m. train out of Edinburgh, which was the main train station. Wasn't, we had been there for 12 hours at that point, so we weren't going to be adjusted. But we drag our club. Now, the problem was I recommend making home base somewhere. And we did. We made St. Andrews our home base, but we didn't do it until the second night. I wanted to have the option of hanging out around North Berwick or just not knowing how fatigued we were going to be. So we spent a night in Edinburgh. So if it had just been golf clubs on our back, that probably would have been fine. But dragging luggage and golf travel cases up the hill to the train station, taking the train to Carnoustie, which is a lovely little town, but everybody was asleep until we got there because of the cobblestone roads and sidewalks. I don't know, 300-400 yards from the train station to the clubhouse, which nobody was at that time of morning. Yeah, we woke up the whole village if it hadn't been for the 30-mile-an-hour wind blowing through town. So logistics, I would have taken a much different approach with having to do it over again. Now we got some good stories out of it and we know what not to do now, but that would be the big change.
What's your favorite thing to do off the course when you're in Scotland? I don't remember from the podcast if you did a lot outside of golf, but
being in St. Andrews, just kind of being a college town and all the kids were in there. One of the most jarring things in the world is to be walking down the sidewalk in St. Andrews and hear somebody with like a Texas drawl walking down the street in the other direction, some 20-year-old kid in an academic robe. I wasn't prepared for that. But we just kind of did the pub scene. We found different places to eat. Our one big dinner, we did Steak Barn one night and we went to Forgan's for kind of sit down. That was our goodbye to St. Andrews that night. But yeah, we just kind of, I don't know if it was overly touristy, but we stayed closer to the university. So we just kind of hung around campus and sight saw a little bit. But the days were short enough that far north in October that we never did get a second 36 in. There were a couple of days we got 9 or 12 extra holes in, kind of chasing the sun down. But we just golfed and ate and drank our way around town.
Well, you hit two wonderful spots. The Steak Barn is a fun spot. Actually, they've got a pizza place in that area, and they've got that Valgo larder.
Yeah.
I've eaten there quite a bit, but and Forgan's is a favorite. It's a marvelous restaurant. Kind of hard to find, kind of tucked back in that alleyway, right?
Right.
But a wonderful place to eat. Um, so let me ask this: if a friend told you that he booked a trip to Scotland, and he asked you what can I expect, what would you tell him about the overall experience?
Get ready to have a very easy trip. Everywhere we went, people were accommodating. I mean, the Scots are my people. That's my ancestral heritage. They don't have the greatest reputation necessarily for outsiders, quote unquote. But our experience was everybody was welcoming. They appreciated golfers coming, especially in St. Andrews, in a place like Carnoustie, where um, they knew why you were there. They were glad that you were there. As long as you don't do sort of ugly American tendencies, bad stereotypical things, people are going to go out of their way. It's almost like Southern hospitality, just with a different accent.
Yeah.
The food is better than advertised. What to expect. Just have fun, and I thoroughly recommend it. And this I got from Graylin Loomis, and this is what I sing to everybody: immerse yourself somewhere. Don't try to do Scotland, the whole of the country, and trophy hunt the entire open rota in one trip. What we would have missed spending all our time in a car or a train, trying to go from Hoylake to, Troon to Inverness or Aberdeen or whatever. We could have just done that entire East Coast on the train, but we would have spent our whole lives on the train rather than being able to walk around campus, stumbling on Forgans and some other fun restaurants and things. Just being able to walk around. Sunday, we walked around the old course. It's a park on Sundays. It's open to everybody. Being able to kind of take that in, that fun experience, set up home base somewhere, immerse yourself, even if it's two places. If you do that, you're going to have a great time.
Did you come to understand why the Dunvegan has been named the best 19th hole in golf by several golf magazines?
Absolutely. It's the clubhouse for the old course. I mean, it really is. It's where you go. It's where you recount your rounds, you laugh, you make new friends. My only regret is that we didn't get to the Jigger. So I've got no point of reference for comparison, but the Dunvegan it was perfect for us. You go in there, grab a sandwich, look at all the pictures of all the famous pros and celebrities that have popped in there. Really,
well, the Jigger Inn is a place that's better in the summer because they've got outdoor seating along the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, it's perfect spot for a post-round drink during the summer or warmer months. And there's a new one that's opened up underneath Rusacks. It's called the One Under. That's a golf pub. It just opened. Well, it opened 2 years after you were there, but it's because they redid the whole Rusacks. It's
right. I've got two golf balls on my shelf. One is my hole-in-one that I got down at the Cradle. That was my first hole-in-one. And the other is my golf ball that's got a big old black skid mark on it. That was my ball. Bounced off the Rusacks parking lot, came back into play playing 18. Left is okay and right is awful. I had to hit 2 off the tee on 18 at the old course because I didn't know if that one came back. But sure enough, it did. Left me a nice little wedge in for a 3-putt bogey to get out.
Well, they in pool they make you replay that. They call that slop. Those shots don't count.
Not in my matches. My $2 Nassau, I'm fighting for everything I can.
I would have thought your buddy Polo would have been the one that hit that hotel. Did he make it to the fairway?
I think he made it to one fairway. I think he straightened one out, or that hook finally showed up at the last minute, which was fine because it was late enough in the day. Nobody was on one.
Now, Dave, my recollection is that you played North Berwick, Leven Links. Leven Links, I think you played last.
Yes.
The Castle course, the old course, Carnoustie, Ely. Am I missing any?
North Berwick, Carnoustie.
Did you play Castle. The new course?
No. We played the Castle, and then Matt and I basically snuck on to Jubilee. for about 12 holes. We had unfinished business, and that was might have been the most fun I had on the entire trip, because we went out. We got done from the castle course, which we were pretty beat up. That's a tough walk. That might be the hardest walk of anything on a Scottish coast. And we come into town to grab some lunch, but on our way to the Dunvegan, we have the cabbie drop us by the clubhouse and say, "Hey, is there anything open?" We didn't care which course. We're just like, "Is there anything open? If we come back in an hour?" Like, "Yeah, sure. You can get on Jubilee. That's fine." So 45, we scarf down our sandwiches, our fish and chips, come back, and everything's closed. The starter is packing up literally and leaving from that little hut there where Jubilee knew. And we basically talk our way on. We give the wrong answer. He's quizzing us, but we give the wrong answers to all these questions because I'm not thinking slyly. But he just doesn't want to put up with it. And he says, "The course is yours, gentlemen." So we go out, no scorecard. I don't know what course we're on. I look down on the tee and it says 300 and something yards. I'm like, that's good enough. It started snowing on us. I was like, we better hurry before they throw us out of here, get out of sight of this clubhouse. So we go out, we play the first. I think I pull up my Google Maps app and figure out, okay, I think we're on the Jubilee course. And we go kind of out towards the West Sands, get to a point where we're judging daylight kind of over our shoulder, like, okay, it's starting to get dark. We better head in. But there was one other guy out there working on his game. We had the entire course to ourselves, just had an epic match that he won the first, and I doubled or nothing coming in and got all my money back. But that was an incredible experience. Those other courses, the other Links Trust courses, you mentioned the new, which everyone says would be the most famous course in golf, right next to the old. But that was the kind of experience, just to be able to get out and be in the moment, enjoying, a match like that, playing a course blind, which I had never done. That was something I'll never forget.
Well, and it's a marvelous golf course. It's a fun golf course. There's,
that tee shot on 16 between the dunes.
I love that.
There was a flag in the distance. We didn't know where we were going. We didn't have a scorecard.
Yeah.
Said, "Do you think we're going there?" "Yeah, might as well." So it was, I don't know, one of the flags from the new course. But it turned out we kind of tugged left. Like, oh, and then we got to the fairway and saw, oh, that's where we're going. But that little shoot, those are things you just don't get here. Just amazing.
So of those courses that you played, which one is your favorite?
If I could play Ely and Carnoustie on alternating days, I'd never get bored and I'd never stop. I would go on for the rest of my life. I loved the old course. Of the courses that I thought I could join, I think Leven would be a fun players course. I think you would get better at golf playing that every day. But Ely and Carnoustie could not be more different. You got maybe the hardest course in the world in Carnoustie, the championship course, with all of those bunkers and the blind shots and the gorse and the Carnasty and all of it. And you've got to, it's climbing Mount Everest for golf. You want to see if you can do it. I broke 90 there. Playing the first time, and I was very happy about that.
Yeah.
You compare that to Ely, which is a short golf course, no par fives, play it on the ground. It's maybe the most spectacular little corner there, 10, 11, 12 on your way to 13 at Ely along the coast. Just as serene and fun and simple to go back and forth between those. I couldn't pick between them. I really couldn't.
Yeah. Well, I love to hear that. We had some clients that were in Scotland this past September, and we put them into the daily ballot for the old course. And it's difficult to get a tee time in St. Andrews in September because it's the R&A autumn meeting. Plus, you've got the lead up to the Dunhill Links Championship. So there aren't a lot of tee times. And while they were there, they had one day that we could get them in the ballot. They were unsuccessful. So we got them on Panmure, which is up right next to Carnoustie. And I texted them after the round. I said, "Hey, how did you guys get on at Panmure?" And their comment was, "Thank God we didn't get on the old, because we would have had to have missed Panmure."
Yeah.
And that's how you feel about about Ely. I mean, it would have been a tragedy to miss that, right? And
would have changed the trip entirely.
Yeah. Yeah, I think So I mean, our biggest thing is tour operators is trying to get people to not go, as you say, trophy hunting, but rather to play Panmure and Leven Links and Ely, along with Carnoustie and the Old Course and Kings Barnes and some of the other better known courses around St. Andrews. But anyway, okay, so Carnoustie and Ely are your two favorite courses in Scotland. What's your favorite course in the world? Now you've been fortunate to play a lot of golf in the U.S. What's of all the courses that you've ever played, what's your favorite?
I've got them right over my shoulders. One of you see, I've got the outline maps. One of those is Tobacco Road, and the other is Mid Pines. And again, it's that completely opposite duality. Just to me, in my mind, just like Ely and Carnoustie.
Yeah.
Tobacco Road is a wild carnival roller coaster ride. It's once that course gets really fun once the ball hits the ground, because you may not know where it's going or what it's going to do. Just kind of a thrill ride. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got this ancient Mid Pines, this ancient Donald Ross, maybe the most pleasant walk in golf, in those tall Carolina pines with little features, little semi-blind shots, and just subtlety everywhere. It's again, if you took my passport away and I got to play two courses over and over again, I don't think I'd ever get tired of those two.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm glad to hear that. So again, I know you're going to Bandon Dunes this year for your big buddies golf trip. Do you have anything left on your golf bucket list?
Well, yes, and a couple of them in this way. I want to see Cabot. Nova Scotia, New Scotland. I just want to see that part of the world. I've spent a little time in New England, but not much, and past that is intriguing to me. But beyond that, the joke I have with my guys is, when we go back, what part of Scotland are we going to? And for the fraternity of us, of the Americans that have been over there, everybody's got a favorite. I have friends that are dieharders about that far western coast, Machrihanish and Airn and over there. My mom wants her ashes spread at the Isle of Skye, further up that west side.
Yeah.
And people tell me that there's just some incredible local golf up there. Other people will swear by Dornoch and things. So getting back, and then I would like to see golf in Ireland as well. There's I think Tom Coyne put it best that I've heard. He's always asked, because he's written the two books about golf. He says if it's a buddy's trip where everybody just wants to have fun and drink afterwards and tell stories, Ireland's the place, because you'll immerse yourself in that kind of local tavern culture. But if your group is a bunch of serious golfers, you can't beat Scotland. Nothing touches it. Nothing beats it. So I've got the angel and the devil on my shoulder want to draw me back to that part of the world.
Well, I'll tell you what, I would not ignore Wales. If you've got guys that want to play affordable golf and play 8 Elys, right? Of course, it's similar to Ely, where you're like, each one you're like, they have Royal Porthcawl there, where they had the Walker Cup and they've had Ryder Cups in the past, but the rest of the courses there are just spectacular. People couldn't be more friendly. But we've got a group that you'll love this. It's a father-son. They're going this June. Think about this. We got them on 6 Open Championship courses and a Ryder Cup venue.
Oh, wow.
So they're going to play Liverpool, Lytham, Birkdale on the West Coast, plus Southport and Ainsdale, which is a Ryder Cup venue from the 1930s. We're going to drive across the country. We're going to stop at the Belfry just for dinner and to see the Belfry. And then they're going to play Royal St. George's, Royal Cinque Ports, and Prince's. And all 3 of them are Open Championship venues. 2 of them aren't in the rotation anymore, and then they'll fly into Manchester and out of London. But that's one of those trips, like, people. Go ahead.
Just out of curiosity, how long of a duration a trip is something like that? Because that's I was very conscious of not making my guys too road weary. But if you have, 2 weeks, That sounds like a great
Well,
trip.
no. Okay, so they're playing 7 courses. I'm looking up because I got all my trips up here. Williams. They leave on the 9th of June and return on the 18th. So one of those days is travel. So it must be 8 nights.
Okay.
Right? And that's a fantastic trip. And Prince, at least 3 of those 7 courses are courses you could become a member of, right?
Nice.
And and then in Southwest England, there's an area called, Cornwall and Devon.
Mm-hmm.
Got St. Enodoc, which we just had the guy on from who's the club secretary, general manager there. It's number 74 in the world, right? And again, it's like Ely. 99% of Americans have never heard of it.
Right.
And they just raised their annual subscription, right? 12%. Guess what they pay for annual dues there? Now, with a 12% hike,
1,200 pounds.
760
God.
for the 74th best course in the world, right? I mean, I know people. If you're a member of Valhalla or the courses here in Atlanta, you're paying more than that a month.
Right. And you're lucky you might not get into the club championship.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, well, I've got one last question for you, and that is, what advice do you have for people who are going to play in Scotland for the first time?
Play match play with your head up instead of your head down. My friend Adrian Logue is fond of saying that, we should play more golf with our head looking up rather than looking down. I mean, taking it in rather than being concerned. Never once in the week we were there, no one asked me what I scored. No one cared.
Right.
I mean, that's true generally, but especially over there. Did you have fun? Did you enjoy it? What'd you like? Because if you kind of go in with that match play mentality of it's impossible not to have fun unless you're just the most miserable golf curmudgeon in the world.
Yeah.
Play match play. It's better.
I love that advice. Yeah, I think most people, when you come off the course, would say, "How'd you get on?" Like, I mean, how did you get along playing? Or how did you like our course today?
Yeah, it's always our course. Did you, it's a welcoming. Like, what did you think of our course? There's such a pride of ownership, and they are truly community golf courses, especially the smaller ones you're talking about outside of the kind of the touristy areas, outside of the open rota, places like Panmure, like Crail, like Leven. It's a, welcome. We're glad you're here. What did you think? They are legitimately and genuinely interested in how their course and their club are received.
Yeah. That's very well said. I know that, one of the mistakes I made for the first several years that I went over was it was all about the golf. Right. So we would get to the course, play the course, get back in the car. So stopping to, well, one, playing with your head up, as you suggested, is great advice. But in addition to that, a lot of times we wouldn't even go in the clubhouse. Right. We would just leave and enjoying the club. Most of those clubs make you a member for the day. Right. Enjoy like North Barrett.
Mm-hmm.
Got full use of the facilities. Same with Ely. Carnoustie, I know you guys went across the street to one of the clubs.
Yeah, that was trip changing for us. That really set up that immersion. Rather than, the other thing I would tell people is at least once get a caddy and listen to them. It's not as expensive as you think, and their advice is invaluable not only on the golf course, but they're going to entertain you and they're going to give you good advice for off the golf course. That's how we found Steak Barn. Was one of our caddies. Carnoustie was our second round of the trip. And, there's enough daylight to decide, do we want to try to sneak in 9 more holes at one of the other Carnoustie places, or do we want to eat? And we'd been up since 4 or 5 that morning. So, and all the caddies to a man, they're all members of the Carnoustie Club. And they all had a real hatred for that Carnoustie clubhouse, the big spaceship that they landed next to the hotel. We'd had breakfast in the Carnoustie hotel, which was great. But they all said, no, come over to the club. They gave us little tickets, 10 or 15% off coupons. Come over to the club. It's open to everybody. So we go in, and this is the Carnoustie Club right across the street from the course. We're there about 90 seconds when the club captain, the president, comes up, introduces himself. Bill, I've still got his business card sitting in my desk. And he said, and he kind of talks our head off and just as welcoming, hey, enjoy your lunch, grab your beer. When you're finished, come find me. I want to show you something in the back. And he does. He shows us, gives us a tour of the clubhouse. And in the back is the memorabilia room. And it's got, that's Ben Hogan's only Open championship, which Ben Hogan he might as well be a living celebrity in Carnoustie. That's how well he's thought of and how big and important he is in their storytelling, at least to the Americans. But Bill tells us all about the sister clubs elsewhere in the world. He shows us from kind of some old cliques and hickory things to Ben Hogan donated some equipment that they've preserved there in their club room, and just could not be more proud of what he has there. Was glad that we were there. We spent 2.5 hours rather than chasing sundown and trying to tire ourselves out after having walked the hardest golf course in the world. We got a nice meal and some drinks and the warmest hospitality. And this was on our second day. So we decided right then, we're not going to overdo the golf. We're going to enjoy this. We're going to take our time. And that we lived that day over and over again at all the subsequent clubs. And it was perfect.
That's fantastic. That's the experience that you get. You got that at Carnoustie, which is unusual to get at a championship venue. And I'm glad that you did. That's more typical of what you would get at Ely or Leven Links or North Berwick or what have you. So anyway, well, hey, it's been a great pleasure having you on, and we're thrilled that you could be with us and share your experiences. It's been fabulous. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.